Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to take a look at a developer's response to all the backlash, and he goes pretty crazy here. So with that being said, if you have not subscribed, do that now, and let's go ahead and dive right into this. Let's go ahead and take a look over here at Twitter/X, and you're going to see a developer by the name of Emil. Now, as of right now, he is currently a lead designer and writer over at Bethesda Game Studios. Well, just recently, he took the liberty to respond back to all the backlash and negative responses to Starfield. So, if you take a look on the screen here, you're going to see his official Twitter and X page right here. This developer left a hefty message, and what we're going to do is read it and actually kind of separate it into sections. So let's go ahead and get right into this. Right here, you can see that Emil says this right here. Funny how disconnected some players are from realities of game development, and yet they speak with complete authority. I mean, I can guess what it takes to make a Hostess Twinkie, but I don't work in the factory, so what the hell do I really know? Not a lot. Part of me really gets it. When you're a consumer and spend money on things, that gives you the right to complain about those things. I spend a lot of money on games every year, and sometimes it takes a lot for me to not scream into the internet collective consciousness. Okay, so let's pause for a second. First off, gaming and Twinkies have nothing in common, and second off, you do not need to know how a Twinkie is made to work in a factory. I'm pretty sure a good portion of the people that are working in factories are just there to get their money and leave. I hardly doubt that they're sitting there being like, oh, I wonder how this Twinkie's made. Oh man, what's the cream filled made out of? Like, that's a ridiculous comparison, and I think this developer's already just lost his mind. Anyways, let's continue on with what he had to say. Emil continues on with, I don't complain about games on social for two main reasons. One, I know how hard it is to make games and have too much respect for fellow devs. Two, I work for a game studio and it would be uncool and unprofessional for me to do so, but sometimes I want to. Oh boy. Most people don't have these constraints and are free to post whatever they want. The internet is a glorious wild, wild west, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And there was a time when I exercised that right very freely. When I was writing game reviews for Adrenaline Vault forever ago, I was absolutely that person who would say whatever I wanted about a game, good or bad. Sometimes the good was over enthusiastically too good, and sometimes the bad was me being a sarcastic asshat. But throughout that time, I actually had no inkling what game development was actually like. How hard the designers, programmers, artists, producers, and everyone else worked. The struggle to bring a vision to life with constantly shifting resources, the stress. Oh boy, this dude sounds like a huge complainer. I mean, really, a huge complainer. You work at Bethesda Game Studios making some money developing games. Why are you complaining? I am sure there are other developers out here that are experiencing some sort of stress, but you do not see them complaining on Twitter about how stressful the job is. And in all honesty, if you do not like a video game, you have the right to complain. You have the right to share your opinions. Starfield was one of those games that had a lot of loading screens, had a lot of different things that just didn't function right, and not to mention there was a bunch of bugs. These are all valid complaints. But anyways, let's go on and read more into this so we can see exactly what Emil has to say. Emil continues on by saying, this isn't me complaining about my job. I've experienced all these things and will again. It's the nature of a AAA game development, but I also have a great position and I am still gainfully employed after 20 plus years, a blessing considering the thousands of layoffs this year. I'm not trying to change anyone's mind because the internet. But given my position, I can't not share the truth. And that truth is, nobody sets out to make a bad game. And most game devs are incredibly talented, even if the game they released isn't up to par. Okay, so let's stop right here for just a brief second. This dude definitely complained about his job, and second off, when it comes down to a game, we expect it to be finished. And honestly, I'm sure a good portion of us do understand that it takes a lot of work to develop a game. We may not know how it feels to actually develop it, but from an outside view, we can definitely tell that it takes a lot of work. But at the same time, as a consumer, you do not want to have a buggy game that's going to ruin your save 300 hours later. I mean, come on. The fact is, Starfield was not a polished game when released, unfortunately. But let's continue on and see what Emil has to say here. Emil says, "See, I never knew this before, but if nothing else, video game development is a series of concessions and tough decisions. There's that perfect game you want to make, and then there's the game you can make. Sometimes, if the gods smile on you, those two are very close. But in order to get there, in order to get it as close as possible to the vision, the team has to push itself harder and harder, often while dealing with devs being shuffled around or leaving, looming deadlines, and creative decisions you wish you didn't have to make." And team is absolutely the operative word here. There's a lot of and lots of folks doing lots of work. Writing, level building, making character models, coding game systems, trying to schedule it all so it can get done and folks don't burn out. And on and on. So sure, you can dislike parts of the game, you can hate on a game entirely, but don't fool yourself into thinking you know why it is the way it is, unless it's somehow documented and verified, or how it got to be that way, good or bad. Chances are, unless you've made a game yourself, you don't know who made certain decisions, who did specific work, how many people were actually available to do that work, anytime challenges faced, or how often you had to overcome technology itself. This one is huge. Well, let's talk about it. To be honest, you do not need to know the ins and outs of the gaming industry to know that a certain game sucks. I mean, if it's buggy, it feels like it's unpolished, then sure, have the right to complain. If we would like to bring up the Twinkie reference here, let's go ahead and bring it up. If I were to go over to his house, give him about half of the Twinkies, and be like, "Hey man, this is the best that we could do, enjoy it," do you think they're going to be happy with it? Probably not, because they paid the full amount for the full product. Not half, but for the full product. Like, you want the whole entire amount. You do not want half, you want the whole entire thing. And so that's the same thing with Starfield. You do not want half of the product, you want the full amount. Which, by the way, is not what we received, because as you guys know, we're going to be receiving more updates coming along, certain quality of life updates, and so they're still improving the game. It's still not over with. Anyways, Emil continues on by saying, "So yes, love games, buy them, play them, and complain to your heart's content. It's sort of the nature of a developer/player transactional relationship. But just know that the game you're playing is in some ways a freaking miracle in and of itself. Normal people have come together to work for years for one goal, to bring fun and happiness. So it helps to remember that and them." So I really do not know what to make of this post, but to be honest, it just seems a bit out of touch. I mean, really. I understand that it takes a lot of work to develop these games. Again, maybe not from experience, but from an outside view, I can definitely tell it takes a lot of work to get these things done. But at the same time, you do not need to know the ins and outs, or nor do you need an education to know that certain games suck because of certain bugs or certain things, right? The fact is, Starfield was a great game at launch. It truly was. There's no doubt about it. But over time, with bugs, certain things that kind of are missing from the game that are soon going to be introduced. As you guys all know, they are introducing some sort of vehicles or some sort of way to travel on planets. The ideas of vehicles was actually brought up during the development, but then sooner or later, the developers were like, nah, we do not need that. And so this is what we got. Not to mention, they also scrapped some of the survival ideas behind the scenes. Like, for example, you had to go look for fuel, which, by the way, I'm thankful that that's not the case, because oh boy, I would have went bonkers. I would have went crazy over this. I mean, seriously, that part would have just drove me nuts. So sure, some things that were scrapped, I totally agree with. But for vehicles and some of the things that we were looking forward to, I don't understand that part. Not to mention, as you guys all know, loading screens is a big issue for some. Some, not so much. There are two different fields essentially, right? You have the other field where players are like, it's not a big deal. I can play the game without, any issues. Loading screens, not a big deal. Then on the other hand, you have the other field where all the players are just like, hey man, I cannot play this. 30 FPS sucks. I hate the loading screens, and so on. Sure, so everyone's going to have their own opinion about the game. Mine mainly is the issues with traveling and bugs mainly. Personally, I try not to judge a game on graphics or gameplay, but whether or not the game is filled with a bunch of bugs. If it is, then absolutely I probably will think that the game sucks, especially if you lose 300 hours later. So with all this information to the side, let me know what you guys think about everything that we've talked about in today's video. If you have any questions, comment down below. I will be answering within the first hour or two. With that being said, thank you guys for the support, and I will see you all in the next video.